The US has stunned tech workers and Indian IT majors with a sudden $100,000 H-1 visa fee. That is more than a tenfold hike to the existing fees.
One of the most abused visa systems in our current immigration system has been the H-1B non-immigrant visa program. This is supposed to allow highly skilled laborers who work in fields that Americans don't work in to come into the United States of America. What this proclamation will do is raise the fee that companies pay to sponsor H-1B applicants to $100,000. This will ensure that the people they're bringing in are actually very highly skilled and that they're not replaceable by American workers.
The H-1B visa is an American work permit that lets employers, primarily tech companies, hire foreign professionals for specialized high-skill jobs such as engineering and research. Last year, Indians accounted for more than 70% of H-1B beneficiaries. China was a distant second at about 11%. Naturally, America's move triggered immediate confusion and chaos amongst IT companies and their Indian employees. Would it hit renewals, pending applications, or only fresh filings? Companies fired memos to its immigrant employees who were visiting countries outside the US, asking them to return immediately. The fear was that no H-1B holder would be allowed into the US. But within hours, of course, Trump's office clarified that this fee structure was only for new petitions and valid for 1 year. But the damage is done. Indian IT firms now face an added $150 to $550 million bill on the fees and may rush to offshore work. This one decision also exposes the larger global pushback against immigration across countries like the UK and Australia, which have seen public anti-immigration protests.
India is home for the Indians, Africa is home for the Africans, and Australia is home for Aussies.
Also, their governments have been quietly bringing in regulations to make immigration tougher. So, what's the real hit for Indian IT and global delivery models? What happens to employees, hiring, on-site placements, contracts, and projects? Can this fee withstand legal and diplomatic scrutiny? How is this sentiment spreading across the globe and being codified into legal systems? And what does this reveal about the politics of borders and belonging? Listen on, it's Tuesday, the 23rd of September. I'm Anirban Chowdhury. This is the Morning Brief. First up, Beena Parmar, ET's in-house tech ace. Hi Beena, welcome to the Morning Brief.
Hi Anirban, thank you for having me.
So, chaotic times, especially with the recent H-1B salvo from Trump. Tell me, what are the initial reactions you're getting from tech companies?
Absolutely. If you just go by the equity markets today, the IT index has been battered and the IT stocks have completely plunged, over 3%. Now, that itself shows the kind of impact we are likely to see on the IT companies. While top companies are still assessing the impact, smaller companies have come out to say that the spike in the visa fee imposition may not be as impactful and the effect will be minimal, as they may not require as many sponsorships. But the larger companies could see at least a higher number. Now, TCS, we know, this largest company, and their sponsors last year were around 5,500. Now, it's already a sluggish business environment. So clearly, they may not go for the extent of 5,500, but there will definitely be some extent of sponsorships that they may require for people to be on site. So profitability will certainly be squeezed to some extent, as they'll see some rise in overhead costs. But there are some set of challenges that they could meet because they have been preparing for a lot of this over the last few years.
So, Beena, in your story today, you wrote that Indian IT firms could face an extra 150 million to 550 million in H-1B fee costs, and EBITDA could be hit by up to 15%. Now, tell me, how will it impact hiring, employee contracts, off-site placements, or project allocation to employees?
So if you were just to come to the impact on EBITDA, Now, going by the current number of visas, which if were required to be sponsored again, the impact will be in the range of 7 to 15%. But this is definitely on the higher end because after this salvo, the companies will definitely try to cut corners. They'll try to make do with fewer people. They'll reassess the strategy, try to keep more offshore. And also, they will want to know what skills they'll want to keep onshore closer to clients. That will definitely minimize. However, localization of talent hiring will increase within the US. Subcontracting, which was once reduced to some extent over the past quarters, that could edge up. Now, subcontracting also comes at a higher cost than what they pay to India-based workforce. So all of this, while they have baked in their delivery models, they will still see some impact. Now, coming to the reinvention of what they would be looking at in terms of hiring, they are looking at alternative talent models. They've already been talking about it for the past 1 or 2 fiscals for sure. They look at more nearshore hiring, which is closer to the US, more offshoring in India. And over the long term, in fact, we could also see fast tracking of the reverse brain drain that India has been talking about. So impact will be manageable, even if it is to some extent will cost on their balance sheets. Another point I want to make is that the target of this executive order pretty much seems is the Indian outsourcing model, given the scale of Indian engineering talent, which US companies are quite reliant on. And the H-1B program is often portrayed as the Indian IT visa channel. But the larger impact is also on the big tech companies, given that I mentioned that Indian IT companies are already kind of maneuvering around the newer regime and tighter policies. But larger tech companies like the Googles and Microsofts or Amazons of the world, they account for a larger share of fresh applications than the Indian IT. And remember, this is also in addition to the 25% tax that's proposed under the Hire Act, which is halting international relocation of employment if US companies outsource more to foreign entities. This is potentially undermining US competitiveness, but we'll have to see that the impact will definitely be to some extent on Indian IT companies.
Understood. Okay, let's talk about deals. I think deals worth about $13 billion are up for renewal between July and December. Do you see clients, renegotiating contracts? Do you see delays in projects? Do you see different talent mixes because of the sudden policy shock?
Certainly, Anirban. I think the renewals are definitely going to take longer. Now, these are all, some of them are larger deals. Deals have anyways been taking a little longer because of the macro uncertainties, the business slowdown. But this definitely could shake the dynamics a little. Companies, both the IT vendors and the clients, will definitely renegotiate in the shorter term. There could be pauses in the existing projects. There could be project implementation timelines which could be stretched as people may not be available locally as earlier. Now, for individual professionals, also there'll be a disruption, especially around renewals and mobility. But over time, both companies and employees will definitely find, say, newer ways of working, alternative models. Like I said, with employers also being reluctant to kind of pay this heavy cost of sponsorship, we could see a shift to remote contracting. We could see more offshore delivery and more gig workers. So all this reworking of models also slows the process to some extent, and project execution could further get delayed.
Thank you, Beena.
Thank you.
Next up, I went to Poorvi Chothani, a global immigration and Indian employment law expert. Poorvi is the founder and managing director of LawQuest. Poorvi, how do you react to this?
Oh, no, I am reacting with grave concern because I'm very concerned about our clients and the impact on employees and their feeling of stability. Because a $100,000 fee per year per employee is a steep amount to pay for your workers. And the ones that are going to suffer the most are going to be the smaller companies because their revenue may not support such high fees unless this person is a critical worker.
Poorvi said the only good thing in this, of course, is the clarity that has come recently and that the fees are only valid for 1 year. There may be litigation by companies or labor and employee rights organizations, but
I don't know whether they will succeed because President Trump has announced this under Section 212F of the Immigration and Nationality Act, which gives him sweeping powers to temporarily suspend the travel of foreign nationals into the United States if it's in the country's interest to do so.
While the imposition of H-1B visa fees have grabbed maximum eyeballs, the US government has been changing other rules too that concern just about anyone who wants to travel there, for work, to live there, and eventually become citizens.
We are seeing that individuals who are applying for citizenship, that is, individuals who are filing for naturalization, they've been on a green card and now they qualify for citizenship. These people normally have to do an English test, they have to do a civics and history test, and appear for a naturalization interview. This has been the process that the USCIS has been following for the past several years, if not several decades. There is a provision in the law which allows them to do in-person investigation of naturalization applicants. So now they have brought that back. Plus, at these interviews, they're now coming down very hard on past violations of the law. So people who were comfortably living there on green cards are now deeply worried about what will happen, especially if they have certain infractions in the past.
And then there is an integrity fee of $250 for people who apply for non-immigrant visas. Who are they? Tourists, students, temporary workers, and exchange visitors. This fee was introduced under Donald Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill Act and signed into law on July 4th, 2025. The fee will be indexed to inflation starting in 2026.
The other thing that they've done is they've created a register of countries that are supposed to be of high immigrant risk, fraud, overstays, etc. And people from these countries will be subject to an immigration bond ranging from $5,000 to $15,000. At the moment, only Malawi and Zambia are on this list, but they expect to update the list as things go along.
All of this is, of course, unprecedented.
I have not seen immigration bonds. I have not seen that. I have not seen a visa integrity fee, means that a fee that you get back when you return to your country. I haven't seen that. And according to me, it's really very hard to implement.
How much worse has it become for students in the last 7-8 months? They are the ones who've borne the brunt of it the most.
Students applying for new visas, of course, are subject to extreme vetting. They're subject to social media checks. They're also subject to the personal interviews, and your answer could have a direct impact. The other thing that students are facing in America, and many of them faced it, were so many of them were given deportation notices. I think it was around May, June that this happened, where what it appears is that the USCIS has started using artificial intelligence. And the artificial intelligence was sweeping criminal records across the country, matching it with immigration records. And if they found that there was a person on, let's say, a student visa who had a DUI, driving under the influence of alcohol, that person they found to be deportable. And then also some of them got visas cancelled. When they issued these notices, they told the students, your CVIS record has been terminated, which is a critical part of immigration compliance. But in the meantime, many students, many from India and other countries, in fear, left the country, leaving their courses incomplete and just getting back home.
Understood. Now, how sustainable is this shift from a clear shift from, say, facilitation to one, the stance of deterrence almost? There is bound to be a political, a diplomatic fallout to this.
Yeah, I don't think that diplomatic intervention could help in this, okay, unless there are human rights violations, etc. Because what the US government is doing is within their sovereign right. They're not doing anything beyond their sovereign right. So I don't know whether diplomatic intervention will have any bearing on this. But of course, civil rights movements, civil rights organizations that are fighting for these cases within the United States will have a bigger impact. Yes, you may make noise in the diplomatic arena. It's like telling India, you better take all the Bangladeshi refugees that come into the country. Is India going to do that? I don't know.
Now, zooming out a little bit, this kind of sentiment is being seen really frequently in other countries also, but mostly these are in the form of protests and assaults, etc. But do you see regulatory overhauls happening in some countries in the West as well?
Absolutely. For example, the United Kingdom has changed how they are accepting or rejecting asylum seekers. Germany has also made changes to their family reunification and tighter eligibility for certain people seeking refuge there or protection, some other type of protection. In France, there is faster asylum processing, but the grounds are much narrower than in the past. So fewer people can get in, but they can get in faster. In Poland and Hungary, there's a lot of pushback at the borders, which is also happening in the United States, especially from the southern border. Their enforcement over there to prevent the illegal entry of people and asylum seekers is much higher. Now they've got to prove that they are eligible before they're admitted into the country. In Australia, also, they've moved the asylum process outside the country instead of bringing them into the country and then adjudicating them, or even if they come, they're keeping them in detention before allowing them really into the country, because the moment they're in the country, constitutional rights kick in. So yeah, there is a worldwide resistance to both immigration, legal immigration, asylum, illegal immigration. Even it is impacting people who are skilled workers, technical workers, etc. I don't know how many countries are going to be really able to survive without the highly skilled workers or without the seasonal workers. For example, in the United States, the H-2A and H-2B programs are for seasonal workers. They are farmers or they are people who are working in the hospitality industry, etc. So the public is facing this on the ground. So I don't know how long they'll be able to sustain it.
Finally, Poorvi, what kind of discourse, debate, regulatory action, and impact do you broadly see in the US, of course, but also across the world in the next 1 year?
So human rights organizations are going to fight for human rights. They will get small wins, I think, but the larger picture is going to get more support from the public at large. But the judges will have the power to intervene and sort of decide what is right and what is wrong for the country. Now, you've got to remember the United States Supreme Court has got a majority of Republican judges, 3 of them who were appointed by President Trump in his last term. So the things are stacked against the human rights organizations, in my opinion.
Poorvi, thank you so much for joining us on the Morning Brief.
Thank you.
Now onto the bigger canvas and the roots. Ranabir Samaddar is an Indian political scientist and a leading theorist on migration. He says that at the root of the anti-immigration wave is a desire to control the identity of immigrants, something that is deep-rooted in colonial and racial sentiment. He started our conversation by dispelling a common misconception.
Most of the migration that is taking place today is, as is conventionally believed, from the global south to the north. But I just want to dispel any misconception on that, because most of the migrants migrate within the global south. So, for example, Bangladeshi migrants may be in India, or Indian migrants may have gone to Sri Lanka. One of the most pronounced instances would be Afghan migrants to Pakistan or Iran. So the population movement, the circulation of people, they are much more in the global south than from the south to the north. So therefore, the anxiety of the West is misplaced, and these are all postures in bad faith. They are connected to colonialism. So let us say the English people went to United States, the Dutch people went, the German went, the Finnish people went in large number to United States. And they were all whites, but today their descendants are not considered to be colonial imposition on the United States. So today, if there is a return of the indigenous people from these regions, which are mostly regions of global south, of course, leaving United States out of this, then you know that the West is roused to fury, anxiety, and whatnot. And finally, this anti-migration wave, as I say, it is an act in bad faith, because it is not that they don't want migrants, but they want migrants in the way they like, in the categories that they would want. Let us say technically competent people, or let us say they should be caregivers from Philippines or teachers from India. So they would not like the migrants to choose by themselves as to where they should go, where they should relocate, and how they should redesign and reshape their lives. On the other hand, migration, like nationalism, is an autonomous thing. Even though governments want to impose restrictions, introduce policies, set in place norms, legislate, courts give their verdict, the migrants' act to migrate is an autonomous act.
Professor, you also say that the politics of anti-immigration is rooted in this concept of securitization. Tell me about that.
If you look at from the statist point of view, you can always say that yes, it's a matter of security, in the sense that it may eat into your labor opportunities. In this idea of securitization, it is very difficult to materially ascertain the truth of it. But we have to again ask, except in few cases, you can always ask, where has the migrant been the concern of security for a state? It is a concern only when the nation is conceptualized in biological terms. In other words, racial purity. You know,
Right.
the securitization of migration is linked to your idea of who is a citizen. So, how do you define citizenship then becomes the background in which you conceptualize the potential threat that the migrant carries to your polity. So, what is interesting is that while we speak of digitization and the virtual world, the fact is that security is becoming even more biological, even though we want to ensure our biological security through digital means.
So, why are economic migrants considered such big threats?
The economic migrant may be a legal migrant, but often we assume that they are illegal migrant. Now, if they're legal migrant, like you are a software engineer or a mechanic and you go to United States, but even then, with all your documents that you have, you may finally be expelled, or you may find that even though you are an economic migrant, legally you have entered, but you do not have a sound legal status. And this has been brought out by the United Nations, the Global Compact, particularly the second compact, which is the compact on safe and sound migration of economic job seekers.
The Global Compact for Safe, Orderly and Regular Migration, adopted by the UN, is a set of 23 objectives that aim to manage migration better across its life cycle by trying to ensure social inclusion, non-discrimination, and the protection of migrants in vulnerable situations.
States want economic migrants, but what the states want is that these migrants should not be allowed to acquire any political identity. So economically, you are visible, but politically, you must remain invisible.
Would you call the Indian immigrants or the brown immigrants in Europe and UK and US also politically visible, which is adding to the problem?
Absolutely, race, color. We thought we had done away with that. But no, racism has come back in a big way. And earlier, races were determined on the basis of blood and color. Now, races are determined on the basis of culture. So, how you eat, how you mate, how you do your family, how you construct your house, what is your language? Even language is becoming a marker of race. So, now there is a cultural construction of race. So, migration in many ways is an act of resistance, because migrant will never be allowed to live in peace in the new city where they arrive. So they have no other way but to resist. And that influences politics.
Sir, how do you see things panning out just as, political thought across the world in terms of anti-migration sentiment in the next, say, 1 year?
Obviously, when you see it on the face of it, state after state are becoming right-wing populist states. So Germany, France, UK, United States, etc.
Right.
But on the other hand, states that miss your eyes, you can think of the countries of the South which are hosting migrants, and they don't have the kind of draconian laws that the populist states have. Go to Thailand and see the way in which different migrant groups have settled there and made the city their own. Therefore, my counter appeal would be that when you think of the world, do not exclude the dialogic culture of the global South. if you want to find out whether the tradition of hospitality is alive, you have to go to the global south. So the world is vast, and it's only the northern part of the world that occupies our gaze. Our gaze has to be wider.
For now, though, just to narrow our gaze to some of the most consequential economies in the world, the situation is bleak and the sentiment worrisome. The US's one-year fee may be temporary, but its shockwaves are far-reaching. It reveals how economics, law, and identity collide in immigration policy. As Washington rewrites the rulebook of commerce and labor and other nations tighten their gates, we will keep tracking how talent, trade, and politics reshape each other. That's it for today. This episode was produced by me and Vinay Joshi, sound designed by Indranil Bhattacharjee. The Morning Brief drops every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday wherever you get your podcasts. Also, don't miss our brand new show, Corner Office Conversation, where we talk to the most interesting business leaders in India and the world every alternate Monday on your favorite listening platform. Thank you. All external clips used in this episode belong to their respective owners. Credits are mentioned in the description.